All right, here we go. Wait, no, that's not what we do. Hang on, hang on. Okay, sorry, 1 second here. We're having some technical issues.
I'm holding on. Should I mute?
And I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
Well, I'm not very calm right now because if you're watching on YouTube, something has just changed on the overlay here. So 1 second while I try to, I'm going to try to fix this here quickly. No,
Do I need to hum some hold music?
Okay, you know what? I'm going to leave it for now. But welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. Some technical issues because StreamYard changes things every once in a while and doesn't let people know that you change things. So there we go. You can, I'm not calm, Tyler, right now. Not calm at all. But you can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks, and subscribe wherever you get your audio. Joined by Dan. Hello, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Kevin?
I was doing good until I don't know what I did here, but I hit a button and
you need a show producer.
I need someone in the background because I can't. It is really hard to host this, and there we go. That's not what I want. It's really hard to host and have the buttons at the same time sometimes. So
do you want me to vamp while you're trying to figure this out?
No, we're just going to leave it because I apologize, everyone. I did something on my end. I don't know how to fix it, and I'd rather might as well just keep going because they're not here for the background. They're here for our fine faces anyway. And,
that's right.
And by the way, Dan, before we go on here and get into the Flames conversation, I think I am officially a Vancouverite, and I think that there was a way that I can prove that to you now. And looked at this morning, woke up this morning. It is a very cold, and I'm sure you're going to appreciate this, -1 here in Vancouver, which I find to be actually cold, as you all have sat in Calgary with very windy and cool conditions over the week.
-18 right now.
What's that?
-18 right now.
Yeah. So
Kevin, you sound like the president-elect. It's too cold outside at -6 to do your inauguration outside.
Yes. Well, it is. Yes. But now
that's too cold. He's not going to like it. He's not going to like the temperatures in Greenland and Canada if he tries to take those into the States.
Yeah, I know. He's probably, if he does want Canada to be the 51st straight, he's got some surprises ahead of him, I think. So anyway, that's for another podcast. We will, here, we're just, doing
Somebody
this.
did point out that if that happens, the NHL would truly be a national hockey league, as it would only be one nation.
There we go. And yeah, how would the 4 nations go for that? Right?
Well, I mean, he would not have Sweden or some of the other nations under his purview yet, so that'd be fine.
Yeah. So yeah, there we go. That's what that is. Before we get into the meat of our conversation, Dan, I do think we need to start with honoring really a generational flame, a lengthy, lifelong flame. And we say lifelong flame because his career did expand into Atlanta as well. And that is, and I'm going to let you chit chat a little bit, and that will allow me to kind of do some background things on my end here. But Al MacNeil passed away within the last couple of weeks. The Flames honored him during the game on Saturday versus the LA Kings last Saturday. And I think they're going to do something a little bit more for him as the season goes on here. I mean, it's been a tough year. We'll get into that. We to talk about some of the top news stories of the year. But this is a guy I think that younger Flame fans will not recognize the impact that he had. But older Flame fans like us will recognize the impact he had on that 1989 team that won the Stanley Cup, as well as the influence that he had in getting Jerome McGinley to Calgary. He was part of that staff, and he was consistently a person that the Flames received feedback, continued to be giving handwritten grades to the Flames even up to this year. So he has been an influential Flame management person really since the beginning, including in Atlanta. So this is actually a pretty significant loss for the Flames community.
Yep, a guy who's been around for a while. I mean, started his own NHL career in 55-56 with the Maple Leafs, and played himself in the NHL pretty much until 67-68, where he played for Pittsburgh. Like you said, joined the Atlanta Flames in 79-80 and was the first head coach for the Flames when they moved to Calgary. A lot of people forget, even though he only officially coached for the Flames until the end of 82, he actually stepped in as a midseason replacement in 02-03 after Greg Gilbert got fired. There's a name that Flames fans forget. It. Greg Gilbert was the head coach here.
That was between, now, if I remember this correctly, that was sort of the Christmas, but they fired Greg Gilbert. They brought in Daryl Sutter, but there was sort of that buffer in between that they needed.
Yeah.
Coach.
He was coached for 11 games and 25 total days. So Gilbert was fired on December 3rd, 2022, and it took 25 days to replace him. Daryl Sutter was the guy who was brought in, and at the time, Al MacNeil returned to being special assistant to GM Craig Button. MacNeil's been around forever. He's one of these old hockey guys, like you said. He's been working with the Flames organization, I think officially or unofficially, for as long as he could. A guy who's always seen around the dome, especially around the press box. A guy who I think I think it's a bigger loss than people understand. And yes, maybe you don't know the name, but he's been constantly involved in the organization. He's a face everybody knows. And not a lot of people know this. His grandson, Jason Sparks, actually joined the LA Kings in the 2022 NHL draft. So at least that Al MacNeil family lineage will continue on in the NHL.
Yeah, he also had an influence on the Olympic team. He was one of the people that brought in Dave King. He was big behind that hire, and back in the day, and I think from all of those things, he's a really good man, and it is a big loss to the community. And kind of look, we'll get into. We're going to talk about the stories of the year, but it's been a tough year for the Flames overall, like just in terms of the last couple of years. Chris Snow, Al MacNeil, Johnny Gaudreau, Matthew Gaudreau, and the Gaudreau family. It's been a pretty tough year overall. So, I mean, I think condolences should be given to the Flames family, MacNeil family. And I do hope they do something to, I mean, they don't need to do a big ceremony or change a street or anything, but this is, I think that as we go on to generations, I think that one of the things I think that one of the things that has to happen is sort of that educational piece of some of the past Flames. Like, I know that everybody knows Lanny McDonald, but there's a lot of other people that I think the Flames, younger Flame fans should take the time to know, and one of them is Al MacNeil. So
I think this is a great example, Kevin, of why in the new building they need some sort of I'll call it a museum for lack of a better term right now, but they need some sort of wall of honor or ring of fire or whatever they want to call it, that Forever Flame program extended. Because you said Al MacNeil's been around forever with the Flames. Like, there's a guy who deserves some sort of honor. I don't think they'll do it in the Saddledome. They've still got old stuff there from, the Olympic team, which I understand for why it was built, but the Saddledome exhibits are starting to age, and I think you need some sort of exhibit like that at the new building where you can honor him. And even guys, behind the scenes, some of the equipment managers, guys like, Gus Thornton, who deserve that recognition, but weren't necessarily the face that the fans saw. Like, there's a lot of people that deserve recognition, and the Flames need to find a way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Speaking of the past, we have not had a chance to podcast about the Flames since Christmas, just because, of course, it's a busy time of year. I was working a lot. I also won't get into it so much, but I was dealing with some mental health challenges as well. But busy time of year. So this is the first Flames podcast from 2025. Happy New Year to all. But we haven't had a chance to recap the stories of the year for the Calgary Flames, and I'll just do my 5 here. Won't spend a lengthy amount of time on them, but we'll go through them. On the number 5 story I put is the jersey retirement of Mika Kiprusoff. And the reason I selected this, Dan, was, this was the time there was a lot of tension within the Flames fan base. We just went through the Elias Lindholm trade. We thought Jacob Markstrom was on his way out. It really looked, the Flames were fading into the non-playoff. This was just before the Chris Tanev, Noah Hannafin trades happened. It was kind of one of those nights where I think it was, we talk about bringing the generations together. I think everybody agrees that Mika Kiprusoff is a beloved member of the Flames community. And I think this jersey retirement was long past due. This was a time that they brought everybody together. It was against the Pittsburgh Penguins. They won the game. It was a really good night. I put that as the number 5 story of the year. There's probably a few other options that could have fit in there, but I decided the jersey retirement was number 5.
I think the jersey retirement also kind of symbolically shows a changing of times within this organization, right? Going from those guys, I mean, that was the 04 team when the Flames were last, let's be honest, the last most successful run they've had, and now going into a bit of a rebuild. And I think there was a bit of a symbolism to retiring that, having Jerome up in the rafters already, having Kipper there now, having Jerome part of the organization, and Conroy the GM. I think it's showing a changing of the guard in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Number 4, I specifically decided on the trade of Elias Lindholm. And if you look at the story around it, the conversation was around what you would pay Elias Lindholm. And of course, a lot of people did think that this would be the most significant asset at the time to get this for the Flames to get. And they did end up getting quite a bit. A first-round pick, Hunter Brzkevich, which the first-round pick was redeemed, a defenseman, Yoni Yermo, and Andrei Kuzmenko. Now, Andrei Kuzmenko has certainly not been any close to the success that anyone hoped when he first started here, and that's a whole other topic. But I think this was sort of the Craig Conroy start of Craig Conroy putting his stamp on the team. So that's why I put this at number 4. I think it technically wasn't a trade deadline deal. This was sort of before the All-Star game that this trade happened. So was for me, that's why I put this at number 4.
Yeah, I mean, it was Conroy's first big deal. I think even more than the Lindholm trade, I think Lindholm since then has become a story. I mean, I think Boston's probably regretting the deal now. I didn't really do a lot in Vancouver. I think when you look at, people said, oh, Calgary should have paid that money. I think everybody now is going, wow, Conroy was right not to. But yeah, I think this was the first shot across the bow that okay, as you know, a Calgary Flames organization, we are ready to make some big changes here. And that I think was that first time that everybody saw it and went, oh yeah, okay, Conroy's doing what needs to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Number 3 was the Jacob Markstrom trade. Now, this has a bigger book to it. Of course, let's start with the rumored Jacob Markstrom trade, which was in February, that night in San Jose that Dustin Wolf started. It was sort of the debut. It was the debut of the significance of Dustin Wolf. And it was sort of that night. A lot of people thought that Jacob Markstrom was sort of signing autographs. It felt like he was gone. The speculation was a trade to New Jersey, which included either a first-round pick and Alexander Holtz. Now, the report is, and I'm just going to say there is some that are reporting that this deal was nixed by ownership. I don't know that to be true or not. But what I do know, eventually, Markstrom did get traded in the summer for first-round pick and Kevin Ball. And Dan, I don't know what happened in February, but I would argue, I would make the suggestion that the Flames came out better with the Kevin Ball trade than they did the Alexander Holtz trade. You got a guy that is a steady left shot defenseman that will be around for a while. Is he a number 1 defenseman? No. Is he eventually going to be a 3-4 a la a Robin Regeer? Probably yes. I think that's more. I'm not going to say he's like Robin Regeer, but I think he's more of a 3-4 guy. But he's a guy that's going to be steady down your left side. And I think this is a better acquisition overall than the Alexander Holtz would have been. You would have got, I know the Flames need right shot players, but it feels like you would have got another guy that you would have been questioning. You could argue the Flames need offense. I think that's a legitimate argument. I just don't know if Alexander Holtz is the guy to do that. I think Kevin Ball was a better acquisition.
On paper, and not knowing what Kevin Ball will become for the Flames, I cannot see how ownership would have nixed one and not the other. I mean, Ball is probably if you look at it where they were at the time, sort of the consolation prize in a way. I think Alexander Holtz is the guy that projected to be the better player. So I can't see management want to do one and not the other, or ownership. I don't know if I buy that part, but I agree. I think that Holtz, I mean, he's gone to Vegas. Vegas is a good team, and he's only got 10 points in 44 games so far. He's not looking as good as I think they wanted him to. He's really more of a winger, I think, than a centerman, and the Flames really need centers right now. But I think that bringing in Ball and seeing what Ball's done is another sign. I mean, I can't think of a bad deal Conroy's done so far. And I think we got to give – it's going to happen. It happens to everybody. At some point, there will be a less than desirable deal. But I think that right now you go, wow, okay, they saw something in this guy. They brought him in. They got the right guy. And the way I look at a lot of these deals, Kevin, is if you don't want to be in Calgary, don't be in Calgary. Like the Flames moved a guy who didn't want to be here, didn't want to come back. Great. They got some value. Good deal from that respect. I wouldn't have probably put this higher than the Lindholm deal myself in terms of impact, but I think this is the one that surprised me the most of the deals in terms of what the Flames got back, because I didn't know what to expect from Ball.
Yeah, I think that this was the reason I put it 3 was the lengthier controversy and sort of the underlying stories that came through it. We've got to see Dustin Wolf. We got to see Dan Vladar. I think the impact of this trade, I think, has had more lingering. The impact of this trade has had more of an impact on the Flames than ultimately the Lindholm trade has had so far. That's why
so far, but I think in the end, the assets from the Lindholm trade will go further for this organization.
Yes, I think you were right. I do agree with you on that. But
if we look at that Kevin Ball in the first, we don't know what that first will be, but it'll be a mid to late first. I think if nothing else, we look at the Lindholm trade. Kuzmenko, yeah, okay, he's not doing what they need, but you know what? He's getting them to the salary floor. He's a popular guy in town. Brstavich, I think, is the real key there. Yes. Yoni Yermo, obviously the first, which I think that's the first that became Gradan. Yeah, and I think that'll be a good pick. And then I think though you'll see a lot more benefit from that going forward.
Yeah. Unless you can make the argument that Dustin Wolf is sort of an asset in terms of became the number 1 guy.
But I think that would have happened either way.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
Right. I mean, if the team is rebuilding this year, I don't see why you would have not brought Wolf up and started to move him into that, first guy, 1A role. I mean, if you're playing every other with him and Vladar, you could have easily done him and Markstrom every other.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I guess that's true. I mean, Markstrom has made his impact. He's making an impact in New Jersey.
To me, Markstrom did not impede Wolf's move to the NHL.
Yeah. No. Dustin Wolf was coming anyway. That's for sure.
I think if anybody's kind of upset with it, it's probably Dan Vladar, who was the heir apparent to Markstrom. Then Markstrom leaves, and now he's got another kid who's sharing those duties.
Yeah, we will get into the segment I'm going to call Defending Dan Vladar in a few moments.
All right.
The other two stories, the construction of Scotia Place, I think this was a long time coming. I think it's fair to say the second biggest disaster handled by Calgary City Council, other than the Green Line, which seems to be, from where I'm sitting in frigid Vancouver, an absolute disaster of how that's been handled. You had Calgary Next. You still have a McMahon Stadium that, yes, you're having the Grey Cup there, Dan, but like the stadium needs some work. Like there needs to be a new stadium in Calgary. Like I'm sorry, that needs to happen. But everything that went through this went through 2 or 3 city councils, 2 or 3 mayors, even a couple of premiers. The fact that the construction has finally happened, positive step, I think. And, any other year than 2024, this is the Flame story of the year, Dan. So, I lost Dan. Hang on a second. But that's the second story of the year. As we lose Dan here. But the number one story for me, and I think was the hockey story of the year, was the passing of Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. I think, of course, everybody will remember that late August night that the reports came out on. Oh, there we are, Dan. Okay, yeah. So let's go back and then we'll.
Sorry about that. I had an internet issue on this side.
Okay. So any other year, Dan, I think I don't know what you heard, but basically through all of this, everything that happened in Calgary with Calgary Next.
And Scotia Place finally breaking ground.
Yeah. This is any other year, this would have been the big story. This would have been the story of the year. But I think finally seeing the construction of this, I think was the story.
Yeah, I mean, I heard you talk about McMahon. We have to remember that McMahon is a different beast because it's not owned by the Flames, it's owned by the university. So the Flames can't just come in and make changes to somebody else's property, right? They are tenants in it. We could debate all you want about where's a better place for an arena or for a football stadium. I have an idea that will never happen, but that's another maybe for a CFL podcast. I think Calgary Next or Scotia Place, what I call the Calgary Next project still happening, I think is a good thing. I think it's going to be a good arena. I'm not really sold on the name or the design, but what do I know? I'm sad that the Saddle Dome is going to be knocked down and not part of our skyline anymore. That's, to me, the worst part of this whole thing, but it's time. I mean, it's a great arena. I love watching hockey in the Saddle Dome. It's sad it's going away. I'm excited for the new rink. I think it's going to do a lot of good things for the city. My whole issue with this, that's been the issue since the beginning, Calgary does not have a secondary building.
No.
I think in a city of Calgary size, you want that 20,000 seat venue, and you need kind of your 10,000 seat venue, your smaller venue for monster trucks and wrestling and smaller shows. And right now we go from the Saddle Dome to Winsport or Max Bell. And I think that's one thing we're going to realize the city we're missing is that sort of mid-sized venue.
Yeah. Just again, sitting here from a Vancouver perspective, I think, you need to have that. It just helps. I think it helps even with the economy within the city because you're allowing people to go to different places for different things, right? And you're allowing.
Yeah.
So
And I think, for a city that has an NHL team, an AHL team, a WHL team, an NLL team, and I would be surprised if not a PWHL team very soon, you can't run all those out of one building if you also want to get concert revenue. Like, I think they need, a 7,000 to 10,000 seat venue where the Hitmen can play and where you can put the, Hitmen logo on the ice and just kind of go with that as your smaller venue. And I think that's the one thing that excited me about the 2026 Olympic bid going way back was the ability to have multiple venues for that. And I think that's the one thing Calgary's overlooking in this is not having that venue.
And I know that a lot of people are pushing back on this because there's billionaire owners and millionaire players, and why aren't you paying for this and that? I get that, but here's my other side of that argument is amateur sports is important. And I think that you need to develop that kind of community. And one of the things that is being lost with a lot of the local news being kind of centralized a little bit is we are losing those local stories about, the young Calgary Hitman player or high school football or university hockey. All of those things without these good arenas cannot happen. And I think it's I would say this even in Vancouver. I think that there needs to be some sort of secondary arenas. Harder to find it here, but it's important. I think the amateur sport growth is important.
And I think we have to look at an arena outside of just the millionaire hockey players. I mean, people in Calgary have complained for years that certain concerts are going to Edmonton or certain concerts are going to Vancouver. You're going to get those to come to Calgary now in some cases. Yeah. But even outside of that, if you look at this as more than a hockey rink, I encourage anybody to take a look at the entertainment district plan the city's put out there. There's going to be hotels. There's going to be an art gallery. There's going to be a lot of meeting places. Like, nobody's going downtown right now. And I still believe this city needs gathering spots. Look at for Flames fans, look back at the legend that is still the Red Mile, right? We need that place, and this is going to provide us that. Yes, there's a hockey rink, but there will also be a place for, concerts. There will also be a place for people to get together and gather around different events. It's going to help with the event center. The new BMO renovations are going to bring a lot of money into the city with bigger conferences coming, other things going on. Like, this is an economic driver more than it is just a hockey rink.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
And that's where I think a lot of people forget is that there's more to this than just a place for the NHL to play hockey. And, as a kid, and you were mentioning amateur sports, there's also 1,000-seat arena attached to this, which is going to be the Flames practice facility. I know how stoked I would have been as a kid if I got to play in the Flames practice rink. That'd be so cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's going to be used for minor hockey. I think if we look at how cities use funding, there's been a lot of dumber stuff Calgary spent money on, like the Blue Ring and things like that really bring no value to anybody. You've got to spend money to make money. And that's what I look at this as happening.
Yeah. Hard to argue the number one story. I think it was the number one hockey story of the year. I think when the tweet report came out that fateful Thursday night, I think everybody's heart went to their chest and hoping it wasn't true. But unfortunately, we learned Friday morning of that late August night that Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau passed away in a very horrible collision during his sister's wedding, Johnny and Matthew's sister's wedding. And I know that Johnny left a long time ago, but you on your podcast, the Fireside Podcast, talked about this from a Columbus perspective. This broke the heart of Calgary.
Yeah.
This was the story of the year and sort of the impacts from it.
I'll just throw in a cheap plug if it's okay, Kevin. Episode 372 of Fireside Chat. You can find that on our website at firesidechat.ca under episodes in the top navigation. We had Jay Forrester from the Locked On Blue Jackets podcast join us to talk about this from a Columbus perspective, which I thought was really interesting. A lot of people had a lot of negative feelings about Johnny and how he left and that sort of thing. That's all been forgotten, right? I mean, this city still rallied around the guy. We realized it's business, and yeah, we hated to see him go, and we hated the way it happened. He was doing what was right for his family. I'll be honest, I was one of those people that was unhappy with the fact that it came down to the 11th hour when he decided he didn't want to be a Flame anymore. And, it's his right to do that. Did I think it was the best way to go? No, but he's a human being, and yeah, we lost a great one. It's been a long time since this league has lost an active playing player of that stature. And I think we're going to see a lot of changes come because of this.
Yeah.
I'm already hearing some arenas that say don't have beer and stuff available for the media in the media lounges anymore because they don't want more drunk driving. Like, I think this is going to wake up a lot of people in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed it too, but I can't think of any beer commercial I've seen on an NHL game this season.
It's been a couple of years since I've seen a beer commercial. It's been a lot of gambling ads. I don't want to touch that with the 10-foot pole.
And I wasn't sure if it was just this year or I don't remember last year, but I thought, I wonder if that has anything to do with it. Passing of Johnny, I'm glad you brought up Matthew. I think, he's the one that gets forgotten in this a lot, not having really made the NHL, the NHL name that his brother did. I love seeing the Goudreaus in town. I love seeing that they got to see some of the things that were made with the tributes to Johnny, like the benches that were made out of the sticks that were left behind and the blankets that were made out of the jerseys. This is going to be a name that's going to be remembered in Calgary for a long time. And I think a guy that, in a way, is almost going to act as a spiritual mascot in a way for this team.
Yeah. Yeah. You could argue, I think certainly for Columbus, it buoyed them a little bit. And I think it buoyed the Flames a little bit to start the year. But
I think the difference with the Flames is there's not many guys in this roster who actually played with him that are left.
No, that's true. But
right, the guys in Columbus, most of them had played with him.
But there's still a lot of people within the organization that were around when Johnny was around. Like Craig Conroy drafted him, was big behind that. So there was this, it still had an impact on the Flames organization. Maybe not specifically the Flames players, but the Flames fans, Flames broadcasters, and I think, just stick tap to Pat Steinberg and the Flames for the night on December 3rd when they named Johnny Gaudreau the first star and allowed got Guy Gaudreau to come out and get that last stand innovation. And because my heart breaks, well, for the entire Gaudreau family, but my heart has been breaking for him and what he's been going through. But
with the mom's trip the Flames recently went on, I was curious if we were going to see Jane Gaudreau on that trip. I was kind of wondering if the Flames would invite her to come because there's always one or two guys whose moms can't be there for whatever reason. And I kind of thought maybe she'd be the quote unquote kind of adopted mom or just an honorary mother. And I was kind of surprised to see that. And maybe she didn't want to go. We don't know if she was invited or not, but I was kind of surprised that we didn't see her there.
Yeah. I never really thought about that, to be honest.
If it was the dad's trip, I'm sure Guy would have been there, and maybe she didn't want the spotlight. She doesn't seem like someone who likes it as much as Guy does.
Yeah.
But I kind of expected that there would have been some to do about her being on that trip.
I think Meredith is due pretty quick here too.
She is. Yep.
Yeah. So.
And, that's kind of a fun thing to think about too, Kevin, that, 18 years from now, the Flames could draft Johnny Gaudreau again.
We could have a Gaudreau and an Iginla in the lineup at the same time.
You could.
Yeah.
Well, probably not because, the Iginla boys are, 10, 15 years older than because one just got drafted, so he'd be 18. The other one's 2 years away, so he'd be about 16. So you might have the last year of an Iginla.
And maybe a first year of a Gaudreau.
In the rookie year of a Gaudreau.
Yeah, maybe.
Which would have been about the right timeline for last generation, too.
Yeah, that kind of was that sort of did happen already. It was sort of the end of Iginla was the beginning of Johnny Gaudreau around that time. Throwing
MacNeil's grandkid in there, and I don't know if Theo's got a kid coming up or not.
Full circle.
I don't think Kipper's kid's playing at all.
By the way, before we get into Rory Cairns, good reminder, stick tap to the firefighters in LA and all of the firefighters that have from Canada that has jumped into LA and helped out with that situation. That has not been fun at all. Anyway,
You know, and on that too, I want to give credit to the LA Kings. I mean, they're playing on the road while Rome is burning. You know, like I can't imagine going on the road, not being there with your family, with your friends as all this is happening, and being, you know, in Calgary during some of this that far away. So good for those guys for being able to keep their heads in this and, you know, do what they need to do while they're on the road.
Yeah.
I kind of expected in some ways that the league might have shut down their schedule for a week or two just to figure everything out, just for family and friends and all that as well.
I think if there wasn't a Four Nations face-off to deal with, they would have.
You could be right.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the Flames here. We will start with the debut of Rory Cairns, which was a pretty good one. You cannot argue with having an assist within 12 seconds of your shift here, Dan. I think Rory Cairns has discovered quite quickly that the NHL is an easy league, and he should pass Wayne Gretzky in points, probably, I'm going to guess, based on pace. 2036 and a reasonable expectation. I'm just kidding, obviously.
About the time the next Gaudreau hits the lineup?
Yeah.
I mean, he's looked good. He's developing well in his first couple games, but we've seen a lot of guys who have played, you know, 3-4 games and looked fantastic and then didn't look great after that. I remember David Moss looked fantastic in his first couple games and didn't look fantastic after that. I mean, Cairns has played in 3 games. He has 3 points as a Flame at this point. Yeah, he looks good. I still don't know if this guy is an NHL or not.
I think he's got some really good instincts. I think there was a lot of adrenaline there. I think what I would say is I don't know what type of NHLer he will be. I don't know if he's going to be a scorer or a checker. I still think we need to figure that out. But I think what he has done, I feel like Jacob Pelche's game has stepped up a little bit. He certainly has development, his chemistry with Pelche. And I think even a little bit before this, I think Igor Sharangovich is slowly starting to get back to last year's Igor Sharangovich. I still feel he's too passive for my own liking. I think that there are times he needs to go to the net a little bit more. He's too much of a perimeter player for my liking. But I think that line has looked pretty good overall. I mean, you know, they didn't have a great first period against the St. Louis Blues on Thursday, and then they kind of played better as that game went on. I think overall, I think give Rory Cairns credit, a 6th-round pick. Where he ends up, I think it's a fair question. But what I do think that this comes out for, and one of the things that I would push back on Flames social media, is I do think the draft and development model that the Flames are using is proof to be effective.
Yep.
And you look at Matt Coronado, you look at Jacob Pelche. I mean, Walker Duehr's not going to be your example for this, but they have Connor Zary is a good example of this. Even Dustin Wolf, although I think Dustin Wolf is a damn good goalie in his own right, what they are doing is working.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I mean, going all the way back to Johnny Gaudreau, right? A lot of people forget he was a 4th-round pick.
Yeah.
It works. And no system's going to work 100% of the time. Like you said, maybe Walker Duehr is not the guy, but no system's going to work 100% of the time. But even a guy like Andrew Mangiapane, a late-round draft pick that developed well, I think Dubé could be in that category too, who probably exceeded expectations for part of his time in Calgary. I think what the Flames are doing is great, and I think it's something that hopefully, you know, I think one of the reasons that Conroy got the GM job was because he knows this model and he's been part of this development model here, and he can keep it up. It's one of the best things Calgary's doing. I think Rory Cairns looking good. Everyone they've called up, sans Walker Duehr, is looking good, I think, and has looked good. I mean, Klapka, another model of that. We're in a rebuild here, and you have to be willing to give those guys chances and find those gems, especially for an organization that, you know, True Living was known for trading the first, trading the second. So good on Calgary for still finding that talent. I'm happy with Rory Cairns. I would like to see him play some center for this team because I think they need to figure out what they've got down the middle. He
did play center this week, right?
He did, but I'd like to see a little bit more of it, especially with. I think it's time to take Rooney out of lineup, so I think you could put him full-time center there for a couple games, see what he's got.
Yeah, I think that I do agree that the time for I'm kind of struggling with this a little bit, and like I do agree that Kevin Rooney is struggling. I don't know, like at some point the Flames are going to have to go outside the organization to figure this out. Like I know they are looking. We'll get into center depth here in a moment, but the center situation here in a moment. But I do feel at some point they have to add some sort of outside bottom six depth. Like,
yeah, I mean, yes and no. It's a rebuilding time, so I think in some ways you've got to try to find that from within. You know, if they were a legitimate playoff team, I'd say probably, but I don't want to give something up to get some bottom six depth that won't be here for very long. I think you need to let Cairns or Dewar or Klapka fill that role if they can.
Well, here's my pushback to you on this is we talked about how amateur sports and, you know, there's all of these other organizations in Calgary that need some love. I think the Calgary Wranglers need a really good Calder Cup run. And I actually am one of those people that believe like to try to keep these players down there.
I've been saying that for years. Don't make a call up. Just see the guy at the NHL. Go watch him.
Yeah, I think the Wranglers. I think this Wrangler team is going really well. I think a Calder Cup run, I think, would do some really good things, not only for the Flames organization. I actually think it would do something for this city. And for the city of Calgary. And I think it would just put some eyes on the Wranglers, where I think it's a little tough to get eyes on the Wranglers right now.
I think it'll show these guys how to win, right? There's something about learning how to win a playoff round, whether it's in the NHL, the AHL, the ECHL. Like, I think the more you can put these guys in playoff scenarios and have them learn how to play that way, the more successful your NHL team will be down the road.
Yeah. So
but I still think you've got to balance that. I mean, I think that, you know, because they're doing well, you have to look at bringing some of those guys up, even if you're rotating guys in and out of that spot. I think you need to reward some of that play and say, okay, we'll bring you up for a couple games. We'll bring you up for a few days while the Wranglers are off and try you out or something like that.
Yeah. That's sort of why I would been, and I still think this can happen, Dan. I know you think this is ridiculous. I think Andrei Kuzmenko on waivers, sending him down to the Wranglers, I think could be a good thing for the Wranglers, because this is that personality that people would come to see. I mean, you've already talked about how beloved he is in Calgary. I think people would spend. I mean, the price for Wrangler tickets probably aren't too bad. You could go and see Andrei Kuzmenko for a couple of games, light up for the Wranglers.
I thought it was a bad idea at first. I've come around to it since you pitched it. I mean, the Flames are already paying him. Whether you pay him to play in the NHL, the AHL, I don't think it really matters there. I think it'd be an interesting way to free up a contract spot. I just wonder what Andrei Kuzmenko you're going to get. Is he going to get angry? Is he going to, you know, be the same guy if he's down in the AHL? I don't know enough about his personality.
The problem with Andrei Kuzmenko from the very beginning in Vancouver was he was signed as a free agent, and he was put into the NHL lineup without being prepared to actually play in the NHL. And I believe, Dan, the more I think about this, 90 to 95% of the players that are either drafted or free agent need
NHL time.
Absolutely do. Like, there's the generational talents out there, like your Bedards, your Celebrinis, your Mitchkoffs.
I mean, you've heard me say this about Bennett for years.
Yeah. The Flames admitted about Bennett. They should have sent him down.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, even some of those generational talents, I think, could still benefit. I mean, I'm even looking at Connor Bedard, who I don't think has lightened up the league as much as a lot of people thought that he would. I think he could have used some HL time, but I think as an organization, you put them on the NHL to sell tickets. And I think as we're starting to see more AHL teams in the same city as the NHL team, I think you could still put them in the AHL and sell tickets.
Yeah. But that's kind of, I think, for if I'm advising Kuzmenko, if you want to get back in the NHL next year, light up the AHL, learn this game, and I think you will. I think you have a chance. I just think, like, you look back at a couple of the games. Like, I'll look back at the game against. It was a Saturday night game. They lost. Geez, a couple of weeks ago, he dropped his stick. He broke his stick.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember which game was that.
I don't remember, but I know the one you're talking about.
It was Nashville. Yeah, and it's just those little things that he's doing that is just not putting his team in a good position. I don't challenge. I don't dare think that he doesn't have talent to score goals. It's all of the other things around that NHL coaches want, because it's easier to score goals when you are better on the boards or you're better at all of those other things. That's kind of where I think that has to happen.
No, you said, someone should advise him if he wants to be in the NHL. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced he does. Like, I'm thinking he might realize it's better just go back home to Russia, make some money in the KHL. Like, I'm not sure he's fighting to be back in the league next year. I don't know, but I'm not sure.
Well, then that's an argument to waive Kuzmenko anyway, because you don't need that in the locker room. And if you want to bring up young people and you want them to have a standard, you'd rather have more Michael Backlunds than Andrei Kuzmenkos.
I think it will happen at this point that he probably will get sent down or waived at some point. I'm not sure they want to do it yet. And I don't know why. I think this coaching staff has given him a longer leash than they should.
Yeah.
He looked good last year, but we knew what we were acquiring with this player. I mean, he's inconsistent. He's not an everyday NHLer. The Flames knew that when they brought it in.
Yeah, that's
totally I mean, fair. That contract.
Yeah, totally fair. But I think that people were hoping that you would get a first-round pick for Kuzmenko. I don't think that was ever, even the Vancouver fans, that was never in the cards.
No. I mean, Calgary took it as a salary dump. I don't think Vancouver's going to get much for it. They needed Calgary to take that contract to make the deal work for Lindholm. I think Calgary is maybe hoping they get a third out of him if he played well.
Yeah, but yeah, that would have been.
And, Kevin, I think where you'll probably see Kuzmenko sent down is as soon as they want to call up one more young guy and the Wranglers say, hey, we're running out of guys here. If you want us to go on a playoff run, that's when I think you'll probably see him sent down.
Yeah. I mean, the Flames just need. I think for me, the other thing is not even just for the playoff. Like, I think I'm not expecting playoffs, but they just need someone better than Kevin Rooney and Walker Duehr at that bottom 4 spot. Like, they really do.
And again, I think even if not better. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about this now or not. I can wait, but I think just try somebody else. Like, Duehr's not cutting it, send him down. Rooney's not going to send him down. Try Clark Bishop. Like, just try, Dryden Hunt has looked good in the past. Just bring in somebody else to see if they've got something different.
I'm surprised they haven't called up Dryden Hunt yet. I knew Ryan.
Me too. The coach seemed to like him last year. I don't know why you haven't tried him.
Yeah, that to me has been a bit. The two mysterious things, we seem to go on tangents, but the two mysterious things this year for me on Huska, I think he's generally done a pretty good job. Did not call up a Dryden Hunt. And I'm really confused of why they took Sharon Govich off the penalty kill this year.
So, okay, let's split those out. Calling up players is not the head coach's job. That's the GM's job.
That's fair.
The guys in the penalty kill is the coach's job.
Yeah. That's fair. Okay, I won't, but
right? It'd be Conroy and Pascal that are probably sitting down talking about who to call up.
Yeah. But I mean, Huska would have some sort of say in, like, okay,
and for all we know, Huska's saying, give me Hunt, and they're not, right? We don't know that, but that's not in his, I mean, sure, he's consulted, but we don't, he's not the one that ultimately files the paperwork.
That's fair. I'll give you that. But the Sharon Govich thing on penalty kill, especially with how bad the penalty kill has been this year, I think that's hurt Sharon Govich and the penalty kill. To me.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, no, I agree. And I don't know what they're trying to do there. I mean, Sharon Govich also came back quicker than we expected. I'm still not convinced that he's maybe 100%.
I don't think he's been 100% all year. I really don't.
And maybe they've taken him off there to limit his ice time so he doesn't get further hurt. I think when the Flames started the season well, and they said, wow, we're doing well. It was kind of, okay, we need Sharon Govich back on the ice. We need, to be at 100%. And I don't know that he was actually ready to come back.
Yeah. Yeah, that to me is the most curious thing that Huska has done. I think overall he's done a good job, but that's my one question.
I mean, when I look at the Wranglers forward roster here, guys that I would try over Rooney and Dewar. I mean, I think Dryden Hunt for sure. He's proved that. I think Clark Bishop, their captain, should get up there. I even think William Stromgren might be worth looking at for a game or two. Martin Ferk, a lot of people forget is down there. That's
another one.
A veteran guy who, if you just need some veteran help, you could bring Ferk up. I think we know we've gotten Klapka. I think those are all options.
Yeah.
I wouldn't bring up Honzig. I think there's something to be said about a young player staying down there and having those reps. Same thing with Morton. It's still his first NHL year, but I think a lot of people forget that Martin Ferk is an old NHLer and is, playing well on the Wranglers. But if you just need some veteran help, I could see even swapping Klapka for you need veterans in the AHL. So I could even see swapping Klapka for Ferk.
Yeah, and I mean, Martin Ferk has that Michael Stone sort of feel for him that he shoots the puck and it goes somewhere towards the net. He'd be a good asset on the power play.
Yeah,
I mean,
and again, I think 28 points, 34 games for the Wranglers this year. That's maybe not saying he's going to stay here forever and always, but a guy that, okay, let's try him for a couple of games, see if he's better than what we got.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think
and as an older guy who is a journeyman, also probably able to easily adapt to a newer roster.
Yeah. I mean, the reason you have Kevin Rooney in the lineup, I think, is for penalty kill. The penalty kill isn't working. It's tough for me to argue for Kevin Rooney in the lineup. It's a guy that I've been wanting to cheer for because when people start ragging on people online, I start defending them. But I'm having trouble defending Kevin Rooney at this point.
And we have to remember that when Rooney first came here, he did not look good, and he was sent down to the Wranglers. I mean, in 2022-23, he played 17 games for the Flames, 51 for the Wranglers, and 9 playoff games that year. The following year, he played 4 for the Wranglers and 33 for the Flames. This is a guy who, came here and was an NHL talent for this team. I think he has shown that maybe he's not quite NHL ready.
Yeah, I think there's a fear. Maybe I just was thinking about this. Maybe the Flames fear they would lose him on waivers, but
at this point, if you lose him, fine.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody wants him and wants to keep him on their NHL roster all year, great. There will be another centerman like that available between now and the end of the year if you want to pick one up.
Yeah.
But I think Rooney's, his deal's up at the end of the year anyways, right?
Yeah, he's done. Yeah, so
and if you just need a body, I mean, there's enough, college hockey's coming to an end soon. You could easily pick up a body for the Wranglers for the rest of the year.
I mean, maybe it wouldn't hurt to give Sam Morton a look even too, right?
Yeah, I think I would go with some of those veteran guys first before you start to disrupt a rookie, because Morton's still in his first year pro. We don't need to try him out yet, but I think, if you want to try a guy that Lucas Siona or someone else, but I mean, I think Ferk, I think Dryden Hunt, I think, Clark Bishop, I think those are the guys you would probably take a look at.
Yeah. All right. Let's, I'm going to call this portion of this podcast Defending Dan Vladar, but I'm going to start by saying this. I do agree that Dustin Wolf is the future. I do agree that this is the guy that you're sort of going to carry the ball with. My issue has been with, and I think this came through for me clearly on Thursday night against the St. Louis Blues and Tuesday night against the St. Louis Blues. When Vladar allows a goal, the Flames internet breaks. And when Wolf doesn't, and Dan, let's put the card on the table here. Dustin Wolf has been great at home. He has not been great on the road. And that's not to be surprised. That's not surprising. He's a rookie goalie, and that's totally fair. And that's part of the development of Dustin Wolf. But Dan Vladar has gotten the tougher starts this year. He has played all of the second of the back-to-backs. He was scheduled to play the second of the back-to-back against the LA Kings. And he has a lot. I'm not saying he has been great, but he has been put in a situation where he is he has done the job that he needs to do ultimately, which is allow Dustin Wolf to succeed, and he has done the cushion. I think he has done some yeoman work for the Flames. I think he deserves a ton of credit, and I just don't understand the villainy of Dan Vladar. Like, it just feels like Dan Vladar, anytime that you want to play him, they play him. It's this, we need to be playing Dustin Wolf more. And I'm sorry, I think that there has to be a limit of what you're playing Dustin Wolf anyway. And Dan Vladar is done exactly the job that the Calgary Flames have asked him to do. Has he allowed bad goals? Yes. But he goes against Vegas, he was outstanding. Unless you will literally want him to try to score a goalie goal when the goalie is in the net, you can't do much more than he did against Vegas. You can't do much more than he did against St. Louis on Tuesday night. He has carried a heavy burden for the Flames, and I just think he deserves more credit than he's getting from a lot of Flames fans.
I think we see this in any fan base where there's a hot rookie or young player, right? Oh my gosh, you limited Bedard, or you limited, Matvei Michkov, or anybody. You get this, oh my gosh, they should be playing more. They're the savior of our organization. And a lot of times when I see people say that, I don't know how educated of a person that is who's having those discussions on Twitter. I mean, yes, everybody wants to see Dustin Wolf, and everyone thinks the next coming of Mika Kiprusoff and all that, but even Mika Kiprusoff had backups who had to play. Like, this is, I think, Kevin, in some ways, fans are having their expectations skewed because of where the Flames are in the standings. I think that would be a different discussion if the Flames were in the bottom 5, but it's, oh my gosh, they're near the playoffs. Let's play him. And, he'll take us on his back like Kibber did in 2004. And I think that that's maybe skewing some fans, but both goalies are good. Like you said, Dan Vladar has had some trickier starts, but Dan Vladar is also the more seasoned NHL goaltender there. So that doesn't surprise me. I think fans need to realize they both have a place, and the development of Dan Vladar is going to be a long-term project. It's not, okay, you played 40 games, now you are, quote-unquote, an NHL starter.
Yeah. Do you mean Dustin Wolf?
Dustin Wolf, yeah. And, and I think, even with Dan Vladar, I was thinking about him because I don't know if he's an NHL starter either. Like, I don't know what either guy is. We've seen hotly contested prospects who didn't turn out to be what we thought they were going to be in the end for goaltenders. We don't know if Dustin Wolf is going to have that long term or not. But I think in a year the Flames don't need to be good, they're managing the starts well. I do think the Flames need to start giving one guy starter minutes, and we're starting to see Wolf getting more than every other, which I think is great. But I don't think that Dan Vladar deserves the vitriol that some people are giving him. He's a better than average other guy, whether you want to call that a backup or a 1B or whatever, term you want to use. He's better than a lot of teams.
Yeah. I just think that you need 3 competent goalies at least to be an effective NHL organization. There's going to be some learning curves with Dustin Wolf. And one of the things that I would suggest, and we're doing this before the Winnipeg game, I would actually, after that Dustin Wolf start in St. Louis, Dan, I would actually go back to Dustin Wolf. And here's why. This is an opportunity for him to rebound from a bad game. And that's part of learning to be a number 1 goalie in the league. I
totally agree with you. Yeah, you can't shield him. You need to give him the chance to try, to play, to say, okay, you had a bad game. What are you going to do next time?
And for those that are saying, like, look, we haven't seen Devin. We will see Devin Cooley play in the NHL. And Devin Cooley, like, I get it. He's playing really well in the AHL. We haven't seen him in the NHL for a while yet. So I'm still a little standoffish. I'm like, oh, yeah, we got Devin Cooley and everything will be fine. Like, we'll live happily ever after. I'm not on that plane yet until I see Devin Cooley there. But I will say this. For a lot of those people that want Dustin Wolf to be the number 1 goalie, I'm just going to point you to Vancouver and what's gone on with Thatcher Demko, who missed almost a year of hockey for an injury, right? I think this whole thing is fascinating because they're like, oh, we played Markstrom too much and he got burned out in the playoffs. Like, why are you wanting to play Wolf 50 or 60 games so early in his career?
Mhm.
You are already going to start to burn him out. He's probably going to play in the World Championships in the spring, summer when the Flames are eliminated in the playoffs. He's got a lot of hockey ahead of him. I don't think we need to rush Dustin Wolf into anything, right? I think it's especially.
But again, fans want to see their savior.
Yeah. And I get it. You pay the money to go see Dustin Wolf, but I think the Flames are doing the right thing and just bringing him up slowly.
Yep. And I think without knowing, you mentioned Vancouver, which I think is an interesting comparison, Kevin. If Dustin Wolf got hurt, I'd feel much more confident with Dan Vladar than I would with Devin Cooley.
Yeah.
I think Dan Vladar has the potential to be a starter. I don't think Cooley does.
That's totally fair.
Right?
I'm
now,
more convinced.
And I don't know if you want to have this discussion or not. We've talked about on Fireside Chat. Does Dan Vladar, his contract's up at the end of the year, do you come back to Calgary? Like, do you want to come back to be, let's be honest, second fiddle to Dustin Wolf? Or do you try to say, there's a lot of teams right now that need goaltending help. I'm going to go somewhere else.
I think the Flames should bring him back.
Do you think he wants to come back? Do you overpay him to come back?
What's an overpay for Vladar?
Well, that's the thing. So next year, Wolf's contract's going to be up. So I think, if I'm Wolf's agent, I'm asking for at least $1 million more than whatever you're paying Vladar. So you're going to set your market for Wolf by what you play Vladar. I don't think you can go higher than 3 for Vladar.
Well, Blackwood got 5.2 for his extension. I don't see Wolf in the 5.2. I think probably 4. I think with just looking here, I think Kevin Lankinen, off the top of my head, is going to command 3 to 5 in the open market. I don't.
Blackwood's
think
also 28. I think you could get a lot more for a younger guy.
If I was Vladar, I would try a short-term 1 to 2 year deal with the Flames and see if you can wait and see what this market shakes out, because you also got an increasing cap coming up as well, so you could make more money. If I'm the Flames, I would.
I think it goes either way. You could make more money, or somebody could emerge and take a starter spot that you might have been able to get paid for.
Yeah, I think
LA needs goaltending. I think there's a few teams that need goaltending and may not a year from now. And I don't know if it's like, okay, I think it'd be totally fair for Vladar and to say, let me go to July 1st. Let me see what offers I get. And if I don't get a big starter deal, I'll come back. And if I was Connor, I'd totally be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I think you owe it to him in a way.
That's fair. I think he can't do the Oliver Shillington and gamble. I think he needs to be smart about this. I think Shillington overplayed his hand.
Oh, I agree. But I think I think Vladar has a bigger body of work than Shillington does as a successful pro.
Yeah.
And like I said, if I was Vladar's agent, I'd say, let's see what we can get.
The other thing that Vladar's argument is, though, too, as I think about this, is how many teams have not had an injured goalie this year? Skinner's been fine. I think most teams have had an injured goalie this year. I can only think of like at least half the league has had an injured goalie at some point this year. So Vladar's argument is I have not been injured. And I recovered from a hip surgery a lot of people forget that, right? He recovered from hip surgery and came back a lot sooner than a lot of people gave him credit for or expected, right? So I don't know. I see your point. If I'm the Flames, I would try to keep him. But if I'm Vladar, I actually do think I have a case for an open market of being a dependable, at least backup.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I want the Flames to move him, but I totally, as a Flames fan, would not fault him if he says, hey, I can go over here, get paid, and be a quote-unquote starter.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I think that the depth piece of this the depth of the goaltending position is becoming more and more important. I'm of the belief that you should draft a goalie every year if you can, because some of them will work out and some of them will not, and you just continue to have that pipeline. So,
yeah, I mean,
That's
I
what
would
the-
not even be surprised if Edmonton wanted some help behind Stuart Skinner and might even be able to make a free agent offer to Vladar.
Yeah. Well, they made a free agent. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that either. I mean, I could see a case if Lankinen leaves Vancouver that Vancouver has a look at Vladar too.
I think LA is a great example of a team that has good players, but questionable goaltending. I don't know that Cooper and Riddick are the pair you want. I don't know that Joey Decord is better than Vladar. Like, there's a lot of guys when I look around this league, Connor Ingram,
Yeah.
Peter Mrazek. Like, I think there's a lot of teams. If Vladar came open at a reasonable price in a short term, I'd probably jump on him. And I think it'd be totally reasonable for them to say, you know what, we'd love to have you back. We understand situations have changed. It's not, okay, Markstrom's gone, you're the heir apparent. See what you can get. If you can't, we'd love to have you back. Here's our number.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally fair. I think a lot of people also, yeah.
Eric Comrie has been confirmed to play against the Flames tonight. I think he's better than Eric Comrie.
Who's starting for Calgary?
Unconfirmed still.
Okay. Oh, Hellebuck needs a break too. I mean, he's so
now on that, could you see, like, I think if Dan Vladar isn't going to come back, or if you're going to let him test the free agent market, I think he's the biggest piece the Flames could afford to do something with at the deadline. What do you think the likelihood is that he's not a Flame after the deadline?
depends where the Flames are. Like I think but it's not going to be a significant asset though. Like, this is not going to be like, this will be a mid-round pick at best.
I think it depends. I think if there's another team that has a goalie hurt between now and then, a playoff scenario, I think you could see like a 29th pick team willing to give you a second.
Ooh, I don't see that, Dan. I'm sorry. I think the highest would be even a third.
I think a team that has no, like, I think Edmonton, for example, I'm not saying Edmonton, Calgary trade, but if I'm Edmonton and I think I can go deep, I'd want more depth than Skinner.
Yeah,
I think it could end up being conditional, where it's like a second if we go deep, a third otherwise. But we talked about Rory Cairns, a 6th-round pick. The Flames can do a lot with even a third.
That's true. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. Like, it is an asset that you're
not going to get a huge asset out of it. I also think you talked about wanting a bottom 6 forward. I think that Vladar could net you a bottom 6 forward.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, the problem is he's got an 889 save percentage, which is not a great save percentage, but save percentage is down throughout the league. So, I think the Vladar is the most likely. Vladar and or Kuzmenko are the most likely Flame pieces to be moved before the trade deadline.
But again, Vladar is having success. Kuzmenko's not. Who's going to give the Flames anything for Kuzmenko?
Yeah, you'll get a 7th. Yeah.
Right. I mean, if we're talking about waiving him, why would you give a son when you could just get him for free, essentially?
Yeah.
And nobody wants to take on that $5 million. Nobody's got $5 million. Like, if you do, you're going to use it smarter.
Yeah.
I think Vladar is really, and I'm not saying they should do it, but I think Vladar is the best trade piece you have outside of Andersson, if you think they're going to go that way.
Well, the other trade piece that I could see, and I don't think you get anything for him, but Tyson Barrie is still in the Flames organization. I don't think when's the last
a lot of people forgot he's actually a Flame this year.
Like, he hasn't played in such a long time. It's just like,
but I think that's also,
you know what? I'm going to throw a name at you that I wonder about now that I think about this. I have never been, I don't think the Flames were overly convinced about Daniil Miromanov, even in training camp. And I think that was part of the reason why they have 8 defensemen. I wonder if he's a guy that is, I wonder if this is a guy that I could see moved at the deadline.
But again, who wants Miromanov?
I don't know. But I think
if I'm a playoff team looking for, defensive help, I think I could find better than Miromanov.
You probably could. But if you're a young up-and-coming team, you might want to take a chance at him. That could be a hockey deal, right? Where you trade a project for a project.
The Flames have 2 years in that deal, 1.25 this year and next year. I don't know anyone that would want to take that on with one more year attached to it.
Could you see him
Next year
going down? Could you see
next
him
year
going
the down to the Wranglers? No, I think Mirmanov is fine as a 6-7 guy. I think you just keep him here. I could see maybe next year the deadline. I mean, remember Trio always used to move a pick for some, 6-7 defenseman just to have depth. I could see doing that next year. I don't know if I'd want to take him on with another year on his deal.
Yeah.
And again, as a rebuilding team, they don't need a great blue line now. Tyson Barrie, I'm just looking, has played 9 games for the Flames. I think that's exactly what they wanted. Tyson Barrie was the, in case of emergency, break glass and put him on the ice move. The fact he's not playing, I think, says a lot about the development of the other guys.
Yeah, Joel Hanley has been a really good piece, and that's a guy that I
call too.
I'm a big fan of Braden Hall. What Bean is, you're looking there. Jake Bean has it's a 2-year deal for Jake Bean, right?
Yep. Yeah, 1.75 this year, next year.
I actually have liked Jake Bean for what he is. I think he's done. I think he's done exactly what he's needed to do. I do wonder if Joel Hanley is an option for a trade piece, though. I
think if you're going to move a defenseman for the Flames, Hanley's the one that makes the most sense. He's 33. I could see he's got 700,000. Like anybody can swallow that. If I'm a team and I just need a quick, defensive boost to my team, or even a number 7 going to the playoffs, I'd take him.
Yeah.
Going back to Mirmanov, if I can, I think that Mirmanov last year when he came in, the Flames needed blue line bodies, and I think he was put in the top 4 because they needed a guy. I don't think he is a top 4. I think he's a great 6. I think he's an okay 5. I think he's a fantastic 7. Like I don't know. Sure, if somebody offers me a 4th or a 3rd for him, I take him. But at this point, sure, if you want to send him down to the Wranglers, somebody earns his spot, great. I don't think anyone's earned his spot yet. But next year, I think you want him there to push some of those young guys. I mean, if I were talking to Poirier, I'd say take a spot.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Conroy's first thing was like take a jersey. So
yeah, and at 1.25, I see no issue with keeping Mirmanov as a 7 if you need to.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I do think is convinced me though about what I think for Mackenzie Weegar, he needs to be on the right side more than the left. So whatever his defensive partner is, needs to be a left side defenseman. Weir's not as effective on the left side as he is on the right. He clearly looks a lot more comfortable on
Ball is a left shot.
Ball's a right shot.
Ball, sorry.
Yeah, Kevin Ball's a left shot. Yeah, and then you got Jake Bean. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Again, I mean, the Flames have some time to figure this out, right? This is not, is this a blue line that takes you deep? No. Is it a blue line that has to take you deep? No.
Doesn't have to. No. Speaking of blue line, let's have a discussion about Rasmus Andersson, which his name has come up this week. He did an interview with Eric Francis and basically said, and I quote, "I hate the Oilers. I hate the Canucks. I understand it's a business." It really sounds like Rasmus, and I think the idea from Elliot Friedman, who was in Canmore for 32 Thoughts, says that the idea is that they're not going to trade Rasmus Andersson this year. They're going to try to offer him an extension on July 1st when they can and see if that can work out. Now, the debate has raged on Flames X on Rasmus Andersson. I'm just going to tell you where I'm at, Dan, and you can kind of see it from my perspective. I think the Flames need to extend Rasmus Andersson. I know that there's a lot of people. I'll address this 30-year-old argument in a minute, but I look at what Rasmus Andersson is. He's got some snarl and bite. He is not a player that a lot of teams like to play against, and that's a hard thing to find in this league right now. I know his offense has dried up a little bit, which is I don't think that's that surprising because I think his offensive numbers were above projection.
I never project him to be as good of an offensive defenseman as he's been.
Yeah, no, but he's 5th in block shots, so you can take that for what it's worth. He's starting to develop a little bit of that Chris Tanev attitude. I think Chris Tanev rubbed off on him in a very good way. I think you've got a pair of Andersson and Ball that, as you're growing, can lead yourself into some sort of success going forward. And I had a conversation with someone on Twitter, and I'm gonna bring this up here as part of the argument, Dan, and this is gonna be controversial. I am not sold on Zane Parekh. I think there are some legitimate concerns about Zane Parekh that will need to be addressed. And even if you are sold on Parekh, Brzeskevich, and Muse, and you think that they are the future of the Flames blue line, you may be right, but they're not coming up at the same time. So you need a guy with a veteran experience to at least bring this team forward. And you will need that anyway, because Parekh, Brzeskevich, and Muse are not going to be at their peak until probably their mid-20s, which is 4 to 5 years from now. So to me, and also I think the Flames need to start, like, after all of this situation where you lose Lindholm, Tanev, Hanifin, you need to start finding players that want to sign and stay within your organization. And Rasmus Andersson is not going to be your franchise defenseman going forward, but he's a part of the guts of what your identity is going to be going forward. And I think you need to sign that. I think, especially in a small market Canadian team, I think you need to establish that this is a place that players want to play. I think the Flames need to sign Rasmus Andersson.
I agree with everything you said. I mean, I think they need to sign him if he wants to sign here and if it's going to be reasonable. I don't want to overpay this guy long term. If you can get him for, and even the number I'm going to give you is higher than I would normally go, but the Flames have a ton of cap space. And if the cap goes up next year, you're going to need to meet the floor. I would give him Weegar money. I'd go up to 7 for him. Weegar's getting 6.25. I'd go $7 million for 3 years. Sure. Anderson's going to be 30. You need veterans. You can't have a team of all young guys on, a rebuilding team. Somebody needs to be the leader. I think, Weegar's 31. I'd argue he's playing his best hockey of his career right now.
Yeah.
So just because you're over 30 doesn't mean you're useless. I totally agree. If Andersson wants to be here, you keep Andersson here. I don't know how much longer we have Michael Backlund as an NHL or as a Flame even. I think you keep Andersson here. You give him the C when Backlund's out of town. He becomes your grizzled veteran. He becomes your long service guy. He's the guy who says, yeah, I want to be here. And even though we're going through some challenges, I opted to stay here. I opted to be here. I see no reason you need to make that trade. The Flames have enough assets. It's not like they need to move him to get assets.
Yeah. And the 30-year-old argument I hate that argument, Dan, because I feel like when someone turns 30, it feels like apparently they lose a limb of some kind and can't play hockey anymore, which that's clearly not the case. You talked about Mackenzie Weegar. Hell, Mark Giordano got a Norris when he was over 30. Michael Backlund is over 30. And I'm going to bring a thought up at you about Backlund in a second, but that just popped into my head. But I think that argument is not washing for me, because you need, you can still be a good player when you're over 30. And we'll get into something a little bit more that a lot of Flame fans want for a contract. But that, by the way, the guy is going to turn 30 during this contract. So We'll bring that up in a second, but I really hate that argument about he's turning 30, so we don't need him anymore. I think that is just I think it's a weak argument. It is a flat out weak argument right now.
I understand what fans are trying to get at. Yes, players generally lose a step when they get to 30. Does that mean they're useless? No. So if Andersson's gone, my question is, who takes that spot? You mentioned some of the young names, Parekh, Brzeskevich. I'd put Poirier in there, some young guys that are coming up. You want those guys to play with veterans. I think part of the reason Andersson learned the game so well is he played with Gio. I think Brody looked better playing with Gio than he has since. So even if, Andersson loses a step when he's 30, that's okay. If Weegar starts to go down, that's okay. But I would love to see Brzeskevich and Weegar, or Brzeskevich and Andersson, or, Parekh and Weegar, and Parekh and Andersson. I want those young guys to have Andersson and Weegar as their partners to learn how this league works. And I think of the Flames, if Andersson says to Conroy, I don't want to be here, then sure, I want to move him. I think we've learned from some of the names you mentioned at the top of the show. If you don't want to be here, we'll find another home for you. But if he comes in to Conroy and says, I want to stay, give the nice man a reasonable contract and let's get this done.
Yeah. I mean, Quinn Hughes learned from Chris Tanev. Lane Hutson's playing with a veteran defenseman. Evan Bouchard is playing with Matthias Ekholm.
Yep.
I think you do need that veteran leadership. Even Jake Sanders is playing with a vet. Like, you look at some of these young defensemen, they need a veteran piece around them. Like, the too old argument for me is not an argument I'm going to put up with anymore.
So, Kevin, if the Flames are in a playoff position, I might feel differently. But what do you think the earliest the Flames kind of, let's say, come out of this rebuild in as? I think it's 27-28.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, well, there's going to be some, I'm sort of on the 28-29 train.
Okay. So let's go with 28-29. So Weegar is signed through 27-28. If you sign Andersson through 28-29, you're not going to need a ton of money before then. All those guys, even then on a 3-year ELC, are going to get you to 27-28 or 28-29, depending on who it is. So, okay, let's sign Andersson. Let's chew up some cap room because we need to. Let's bring him in. Let's get him here till 2027 or 2028. And then, you know what? If he does bottom out, we let him walk.
Yeah.
Right. And you know what? If before then we need that money, buy him out, send him down, trade him for future considerations. Like, but I see no downside to bringing Andersson in. And yes, you can get a lot for him, but you're going to lose out at the same time. Like, sure, maybe they get a centerman, but then they're still without a defenseman. Like,
yeah,
I think you're just shuffling deck chairs in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And it's not helping. You need to kind of keep that consistency, especially on the blue line.
The one thing I think might be good for Andersson is Craig Conroy is part of the old guard, and so is Andersson. I think that Conroy might have some emotional attachment to Andersson and might be more likely to keep him around than a new GM or a guy from outside the organization. Let's say Dave Nonis was the GM.
I think this Flames organization recognizes the impact that Rasmus Andersson has had.
I don't say they don't, but if someone else got a good deal, they might be more willing to take it than Conroy, who says, you know what, this guy says he wants to stay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if there's a lot of GMs that would I think there would be. I don't know if a lot of GMs would trade Rasmus Andersson.
I think depending on where they are in their career, and I think Andersson would get you more because of his deal. Like, I think the big thing for the Flames, because of the money he's making, I think if the right deal came and you're a rebuild, I think a lot of teams would take it.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, the other thing, if you move Andersson, let's be honest, Andersson's probably the biggest name on this team right now. So outside of Wolf, then who are people buying tickets to see?
That's exactly it. Yeah. Like, from a business perspective, this is tough. I mean, I know.
And you got to remember, being a Calgary Flame and a Vancouver Canuck, and especially in the Canadian markets, the job entails more than just putting on a pair of skates 82 times, right? There's a lot of things that these guys are supposed to do in the community and that sort of thing. And Andersson, just like when Goudreau left, there was a lot of stuff in the community that didn't get filled that he did. And same thing when Backlund retires. I think there's going to be a huge hole there. Like, I think Andersson is needed right now to be that leader in that face.
Yeah. Speaking of Backlund, and then before we go down to the center part of our conversation, do you think that there is, if the Flames fade out or here before the trade deadline, do you think, what are the percentage chances that the Flames go to Michael Backlund and say, look, you deserve to win a Stanley Cup. Let's trade you to a contender?
I don't think the Flames say that to him. I think he would be having that discussion with the Flames. He's got this year, next year. I think if the Flames were going to say it to him, it would be next year at the deadline.
Year, yeah.
Again, 4.9 or 4.5 million is a tough number for a lot of teams to swallow right now. The Flames are going to want to eat that for 2 years. I think if Backlund came to the Flames and said, guys, I want out, I think they'd accommodate it, but I don't think the Flames would look at that until next year.
Fair.
I mean, again, what team, if you're trading Backlund, you're probably not getting a roster. The Flames probably wouldn't get a roster player. What team would want to take on 4 or 5 this year, next year for Backlund? And I don't think the Flames want to eat that for 2 years.
I'll tell you a team that could use him is Vancouver.
Sure, but what's Vancouver willing to give up?
That's a good question. Maybe I'll ask.
Right. I think that becomes the question. We hear this a lot on our show from fans. Trade this guy to this team. Well, what do you want back? Right. We're not giving a gift to the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, it's not a present. Like, we need something back.
And honestly, Kevin, I'll be honest. Unless Backlund says I want to go try to win a cup, I think he plays out this contract and he retires a Flame.
I think that's possible too, because I could see him staying within the organization in some sort of capacity.
Yep.
Like, I could see him being part of the. They'll give him an assistant GM role. It'll be kind of like a Conroy again, Backlund, with Nonis sort of overseeing it.
Yeah, or maybe gets a job in the ring. I mean, I don't know how long Pascal wants to be here. I could even see him being a GM for the Wranglers or something like that. But if he wants to go back to Sweden, maybe
Pascal's going to get an NHL job at some point.
Well, that's what I mean. So I think then, maybe Backlund takes that role or something like that. But if he wants to go back to Sweden, maybe he becomes a Swedish scout. Even if they trade him away Jerome got traded away to go win a cup, and we still love him, right? So even if they were to trade Backlund next year, the deadline, I could see him come back to Calgary after that. Giordano, kind of same thing, a little bit different with the expansion draft, but same kind of idea. If he was going to join the organization, like, I would not be surprised, though, to see Michael Backlund hang him up as a Flame.
Fair.
But if that gets done, I think that gets done next year.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the centers, because one of the things that was mentioned on Friedman's 32 Thoughts was the Flames are in the market. And then Conroy has fully admitted this. They're in the market for a right shot center. And they want someone within the age range of 23 to 26, and they want, someone long-term, but they are apparently exploring the rental market if they stay in this playoff chase or not. So, and I think intellectually they know they need someone more than what Kevin Rooney provides. So I think they know that. But a few names that have come up on the list of consideration, and I'm going to toss the first one out here, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to discuss this. The one name that is, of course, with all of the noise coming out of Vancouver with the Miller-Pettersson controversy, talk that one or both will be moved, and there are Flames Twitter that are all over the idea of Elias Pettersson. Let me go through the stats of Elias Pettersson before I ask you where you're at with him. And just give me a couple of seconds here, because I do think that this is an important conversation, because the theory is that this is a guy that is a number one center in the National Hockey League. This is what he is being paid, 11.6. And after this year, this is a no move clause. So you are
38 games this year, 10 goals, 19 assists for 29 points. Last year he did better than point a game. The year before that, he did better than point a game.
Okay. Just before you've done the stats, I'm just going to point this out. JT Miller and Elias.
I know you're going to find him. I just thought I had him up. I'll read him out.
Okay, that's fair. JT Miller and Elias Pettersson have scored in a game for the Vancouver Canucks once this year. We are over half of the season. I'm kind of giving you where I'm at. I just want to hear where you're at with this.
So my first question would be, what would the Flames have to give up?
Well, I think a lot of people are suggesting a first round pick, a Connor Zary, a Samuel Honzek kind of package.
My next question, and you probably know this better than I do, is this the first year that Pettersson's been known to be hard to work with, or has this been something that's dogged him his whole career?
Well, I think part of the captaincy issue with the Canucks was in part with his Pettersson's relationship with the media. He has always been a little bit short. JT Miller and Pettersson have had issues for a couple of years at least, reportedly. Last year, before Pettersson signed that contract, there was a report that there was a deal on the table with the Carolina Hurricanes that they were going to move him. And now there's discussion that there's trades now. He has not been close to effective for a year. He has not been the same PD that he was at the beginning. And nobody knows why. And I think that some Flame fans are assuming if you get them out of Vancouver, you put him in a situation in Calgary, he is going to be a number one center and everything, we will live happily ever after.
But if he's a number one center, but he's causing dressing room issues, I don't want him. Right now, the Flames need to build culture.
And it's too much money at this point for him. And this is why I'm a little confused with some people, because they're not willing to pay Rasmus Andersson because he's going to turn 30, but you're willing to pay Elias Pettersson, who will also turn 30 and will be over $11 million when he turns 30. That's what's confusing me about that entire argument.
So here's my thoughts is, again, the Flames worked hard last year to move out guys that didn't want to be here. If Pettersson were to go to his GM and say, Calgary's the place I want to be, I would love to go to Calgary. There's nowhere I'd rather be. Sure, find a way to bring him in. But I don't think that's going to be the case. And if Vancouver's just trying to move damaged goods, I don't think Calgary's the organization that wants damaged goods now. Secondly, you put him on the first line. A center's only as good as the guys around him. Is Marty Popsel going to give him 100 points a year? Sure, he becomes a number one center, but I don't really think it helps the Flames all that much right now.
Yeah, and part of the argument last year was Pettersson's wingers were not helping him, and they needed to find a winger for PD in the offseason. So you're going to already face that argument with Pettersson here. Yeah, I'm not on that. I don't think that this is a wise move for the Flames, and I don't think you should be giving up a Connor Zary right now. I think that is a guy that can be a future captain of the team. I think, again, Is he Connor Zary a franchise guy? No, but he is a guy that you can put in your core, and I think I would not be surprised if he's considered for Team Canada's Olympic team in a couple of years. I think he's that good of a player. And Samuel Honzek, I think, not a guy I would be giving up on yet. And I don't think the Flames really should be giving up on a first round pick necessarily.
If the Flames were a legitimate playoff team, not a team that has played well and sort of lucked into a spot, but a legitimate playoff team, missing number one center, I'd feel differently. But right now, the Flames are rebuilding. I see no reason to bring this guy in, especially when there's a bunch of issues around him. And let's say I see no reason to bring him in at market value. Yeah. If it gets to the point that the Canucks need to liquidate this guy quickly, and you can give them, I don't know, Clark Bishop and Sam Morton for him, and we'll consider you twice in the future and once on Sunday, sure, then...
future and current consideration.
And also, I dreamt about you 3 days ago, so let's throw past consideration in there too.
Current and future consideration.
That's right. If Vancouver needs to liquidate this contract quickly and is willing to take less than market value, and, maybe. But, yeah, I do not give up young assets to bring him in because I don't think it changes much for the Flames. In some ways, I think it sets it back. Now, I will say, Kevin, if this player is moved, I wouldn't be surprised if Calgary is somehow involved in that move. $11 million in the current NHL is a lot of money to move, and I could see Calgary getting involved to eat half of that over long term, but it would cost you something.
Yes, I could see them being a broker for the Pettersson deal. I think that would be a really smart move, but I don't think they should acquire Pettersson.
No, and you can't, from the way I understand the rules, you can't broker and only acquire part of the contract. You have to acquire it for the rest of the contract. They couldn't just broker them for 2 years. So if you want me to take on $5 million for 4 years, it's going to cost you.
It's 8 years though, Dan. That's the issue.
So, see, and that's different too, because then Calgary don't think needs that $5 million next 3 years. In 8 years, they might. So you better pay me something to have me take that on.
Yeah.
Right. Unless Pettersson is coming to Conroy, or his agent's coming to Conroy saying there's nowhere in the league we would rather play than Calgary, I think it's a dumb move.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I know that people are going to argue, what about Jack Eichel? Jack Eichel was not coming to Calgary. It was not going to happen.
Though at the same
wanna
time,
come
it's
to
kind of
Calgary.
funny because the pieces Calgary didn't want to give up have turned out to be nothing.
Yeah.
Like one of the game changers there, from what I understood, was Valimaki.
But I don't think he was. Yeah, but was he really coming to Calgary? He wasn't. I remember us doing a podcast on this saying Jack Eichel was not coming to Calgary.
I agree. I don't think he was coming, but and again, Jack Eichel scenario different in my mind too. Like Jack Eichel was coming off very experimental surgery. We didn't know what he was going to be, and I didn't want to sign him long term without seeing him on the ice.
Yeah, totally fair.
Do I think the Flames maybe need a center? Sure. Do they need a center today? No. Do they need a center by the deadline? I don't think so. I would not go out and sell assets to get that center. If a guy comes up on waivers, sure. If you can get a guy for a 7th, sure. But this is not the year I think the Flames sell a pick.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of names that for me I would consider. I would consider Martin Necas, but in the Carolina, but I think that's an off-season move. And maybe Vincent Trocheck if you're looking at the Rangers as a potential place. I think
if the Flames are going to get a center from somebody this year, it's going to be a cap dump.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see
again,
that.
For where these guys are, sure, they're in the playoff picture, and that's neat and that's fun. This is still a rebuilding team. If you're going to take on a player as a cap dump, that's exactly what they should be doing right now.
Yeah.
And we didn't see Conroy really weaponize that cap dump last year at the deadline. I think if he doesn't do it this year, I'm going to have some questions because that's a tool he needs to utilize.
Yeah, that's where I think the Flames will be active at the trade.
I mean, he did a little bit. Like we sort of absorbed part of the Hanifin deal and stuff like that. But I would, if Conroy is not making significant moves because there's no upper roster limit after the deadline. Even if you bring in a bunch of guys you have no intent of playing, if they're not, eating money to get picks and bodies, I'm going to be disappointed.
Yeah, I do think the weaponizing idea, I'm with you. Like that's where they need to go on that. The one other thing I want to talk about here is, I guess, let's talk about that playoff race that is including right now in the standings, Vancouver, Calgary, St. Louis, and Utah. And, they're kind of all in that. Seattle's kind of in it, but I think Seattle's kind of fading out. I think we do agree that Calgary will be fading out of this here at some point.
We've been saying on our show since the beginning of the year, this is neat. This is fun. When do they bottom out? When do they regress to the mean?
I think,
and I'll be honest. After these St. Louis games, I think it's coming.
Yeah, I think so too. I just don't think that they're not in the Vancouver. Although to be fair, they've beaten Vancouver twice this year. I mean,
but I mean, there's times the Flames have opened their season. What was it last year? They beat Colorado, the champions, and just because you beat a good team doesn't mean you're a good team.
No. So the 4 that are currently kind of in this wild card run is Calgary at 49, Vancouver 48, St. Louis 48, Utah 43, Anaheim's at 42. We don't think that we look at them as a playoff team. On Seattle 41, I don't look at them as a playoff team. The thing that this is here's a precursor of this. I think that there's one wild card spot left. I think Colorado or Dallas is going to get the other one. And then really at this point, although you're 6 to 7 points behind the Kings, I think the top 3 in the Pacific are set. I think it's the Knights, Oilers, and Kings in whatever way that you want to pick that. So that leaves one playoff spot. And I'm going to tell you, I know that this will not be popular with the Canucks side, Dan. I think that's I think the St. Louis Blues are going to be the ones that get it. They seem to be responding to Jim Montgomery in a more positive way. I like that blue line. I really like the fact that they were able to get Dylan Holloway out of Edmonton is a good thing. I'm still, and Robert Thomas is a legit talent that probably was a miss for Team Canada. I am a little bit concerned about their goaltending. I'm not entirely a Jordan Binnington fan, but it only needs to be better. It needs to be good enough. I I see them getting that final wild card spot. I don't know where you're at.
I'm just looking at a few things here. I think you're right. The goaltending is questionable there. I think Binnington is good enough. I'm not sure about Joel Hofer. Again, maybe a team that might explore, bringing a Dan Vladar in. Who knows? But going into the season, I had said I thought both wild cards in the Pacific would go to the Central Division. I thought that was because I thought it would probably be I thought Nashville would be a lot more competitive than they are. And I was kind of expecting it to be Winnipeg, Minnesota, Dallas, Colorado, Nashville. And Nashville's fallen off. I don't think Calgary or Vancouver gets that wild card spot. I think Colorado definitely is a lock. It's going to be Colorado or Dallas. I think those guys are going to wrestle for 3 for a while. I think St. Louis is a very viable option. I don't know that Utah's got the horses to do it this year. But I think you're right. I think Calgary's on the way down. I think it'll be St. Louis, or if Vancouver can sort out these issues quickly, they might sneak in.
I mean, you got Quinn Hughes in Vancouver. That's a legitimate argument. I mean, for me right now, the concern in Vancouver is that I don't like. There's just so much stuff going on that's not allowing this team to be consistent. If they can be consistent,
I think if they can move one of those 2 forwards by the Four Nations faceoff, they might be able to get their crap together enough to just hold that spot.
Maybe.
But honestly, I think it'll be St. Louis. As much as I want it to be Calgary, if Calgary's going to do it, this is the year to do it because of the conditions on the first. If you're going to give up your first, you might as well be in a playoff spot to give it up, right? Like, because of the conditions on that first round pick this year, this is the year for Calgary to do it. So I think St. Louis the most likely, but I think Calgary or Vancouver, if not everything goes perfect for St. Louis, one of those 2 teams is going to sneak in.
Yeah.
But I think we'll be out in one. Like, any of those 3 teams, I think, is out first round.
No, agreed. I would agree with that. But I mean, yeah.
And you mentioned Jim Montgomery. Every time I hear his name, I think of that old. Do you remember that meme, Flea Market Montgomery? And that guy who danced around his flea market?
No.
All right, that's your homework. Look up the Flea Market Montgomery game after the show. And I keep thinking of Coach Montgomery dancing and being like, it's just like a hockey game. Hey. Anyway, look it up when we're done. But yeah, I think St. Louis is could make it, but we always see a new coach give a team a boost for a short period. I think the question is, how long does this team respond to Montgomery the way they are?
Yeah, that's fair, but they don't need to go on an incredible run, right? They just need to go on a steady run. And
they need to go on a steady run, and they need Calgary and Vancouver to falter.
Yeah. I mean, the amazing thing is of the teams in this playoff run over the last 10, Vancouver's the worst at 2-4-3. No. That's just the Vancouver's the big problem in Vancouver isn't only that they're not playing well, is everyone else around them, like Vegas, Edmonton, and LA, don't lose 2 in a row. Well, that's not true. Vegas just lost 2 in a row. But the Oilers are 8-2 in their last 10. The Kings are 6-3-1 in their last 10. Like, they just keep winning. They don't lose a significant amount of time.
I think I said on just last year. I don't think Vancouver is ready yet. I think that they're a young team that had some success. I don't think they're built to be a long run yet.
I will refer to Sean and Chris when we discuss that tomorrow.
I think they're getting there, but I think that there's still some holes. I think, like Edmonton, I don't think Edmonton is as good as their stats show this year or last year. Like, Edmonton has fought their way back up. This is a team that doesn't have a complete roster either.
They got Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl that can score at will, and they're scoring their way out of problem.
They can outscore their mistakes.
Yeah.
No, I think I don't think it's Utah. I think Utah is going to falter here. Anaheim, I don't think is in the conversation at all. Like, of Calgary, Vancouver, and St. Louis, I guess St. Louis makes the most sense because I think they can do it. I think Calgary could do it, but I don't think they're going to.
No.
I think the real story of all of this is how Nashville has fallen so far. Like I said, going into this, I expected Nashville to be in that wild card spot.
Well, I think that one of the things that happened in Nashville was that I think they overplayed their hand with these free agents. I think that they thought that they were a little bit ahead than what they were in terms of their depth. They were hoping that guys like Tommy Novak and Luke Evangelista would take their next steps, and then you added a Marchessault and a Stamkos, and with O'Reilly, you're fine. And those young guys didn't take that necessary step, and we saw this with Jonathan Huberdeau, right? I think when free agents come into a new organization, they will not they don't get off to great starts. It takes a while to adjust. And I would love to sit and talk to Nashville about how Steven Stamkos, after spending in his entire career in Tampa Bay, got sorted in Nashville. I think it's just it takes a while.
Well, and when we say free agents, I'm going to further clarify that a little bit. I think first-time free agents, like, a guy like Stamkos, a guy like Huberdeau, who are used to being in one market forever and now have to uproot yourself and your family and go to a new city. I think we see some guys that are journeymen, and they know how to do that. They know how to go to a new market and adjust right away. But I think when you've been in one market for a long time and now you're being asked to move and relocate and learn all new things, I understand why that's hard.
Yeah. It's just an adjustment. You're adjusting to time zones. You're adjusting.
And not just you, but both those guys are now older, have families. It's one thing for you just to go live in an apartment or a hotel and do this, but it's another now. How's the wife doing? How are the kids doing? Did they come? Are they back home? Like, there's a lot more elements that go into that we don't see.
Yeah, just for me and from a personal side of this, I'm no Steven Stamkos here, but just to put myself in a perspective of changing a little bit later on in life, I don't move to Vancouver if I have a wife and kids. I think I end up staying in Calgary, but it was easier for me to move from Calgary to Vancouver because I was single.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly. And that's why I think for a lot of these young guys, when they get called up from the AHL, it's kind of fun. I get to live in a hotel. I get to live in a bigger city. But yeah, when you're in your 30s and you've got a wife and kids, and they may not even come with you, depending on how long that deal is, right? And, we're all creatures of habit. I think we all learned that, especially during the pandemic, when we're at home and not doing things we used to. And I think just that idea of I've got to live and learn and find new places and learn a new coffee shop. And, I can see, I'm not saying it's an excuse, but I can understand why it'd be a challenge.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else we need to discuss?
I think that's about it for now. In terms of Flame stuff, I think that's about it. I guess my only other thought for you, are you excited about the Four Nations face-off?
I'm more excited than you are.
Are you going to watch it?
What's that? I will be watching.
Are you going to watch it all?
Yes, I will. I'll probably even do some review podcasts on it because I'm just fascinated.
Okay.
I think the U.S. will win. I'm picking them to win, but I know the tickets aren't going great right now, but I think, maybe when this gets closer, it gets a little bit more interesting for people, but it's still a month away. And I think with the NFL playoffs, that is also a really significant thing. And I think once the Super Bowl is over, once the NHL season is kind of in this break, I think people will start focusing a little bit more on the Four Nations. I think even the players at this point, especially in the Eastern Conference, the races are too tight for them to kind of focus on Four Nations. There's nobody really, there's a few teams out, but the Eastern Conference seems to switch all the time. And then the West, you got, even Utah's trying to get in. I think Seattle feels pressure to get in. None of the other teams, right? But there's just a lot of other things going on right now. I think
when you're talking about the NFL, I don't see this being a traveling exhibition for a lot of people. I think your tickets will come from locals.
Totally, yeah. And then
I can't see people saying, "I'll travel from Calgary to go watch this."
Yeah, and I think going forward, they're going to have to, with this tournament, they're going to have to move these things in places where it's not just the East. It's going to have to be in a number of different places. Like,
well, and I think just like the All-Star game, you will, because this replaces the All-Star game every second year. So I think you have markets that would bid on this.
Yeah.
One other question I'll ask you, being in Vancouver, you probably saw the reaction better than I did. What Vancouver responded well to their PWHL game. Do you think they get an expansion franchise?
Yeah, I do. I mean, they got 19,000 in that game, and
do you think it's sustainable in that market?
yes, I think if you put a reasonable price point for the PWHL, I think people will respond. The thing is with Vancouver right now, I think for me, there's not a lot of alternate entertainment in the winter. Like, it's Canucks. Some Giants are far away in Langley, and the Abbotsford Canucks are far away in Abbotsford. And Utah. I think it's hard for a lot of people from Vancouver to get into Abbotsford without a vehicle. I wish there was a better transit system from Vancouver to Abbotsford. So I think the PWHL, if you stick right in Vancouver, I think it has a viable alternative for entertainment, for sports entertainment in this city.
I would love to go ahead.
And I think it's unique with the women. I think that the PWHL has done a really good job of marketing their product overall. And they have some really thoughtful people in sort of, I mean, I think Marie-Philippe Poulin is a person everybody wants to watch. I think Aaron Ambrose is someone that everybody wants to listen to. I think that the PWHL is viable in Vancouver.
As much as I would love to see them in Calgary, I'm not sure that you would get the market outside of one season. Like with the NHL, the AHL, the WHL, I'm not sure there'd be enough viable market. I think you could do it for a season. I don't know if you could do it for more than that.
I think the PWHL has an advantage because they are on Sportsnet, TSN, CBC. I think it's easier for that to be watched. Whereas unfortunately with the Wranglers and the Hitmen, the problem is they're on some streaming services that you have to pay for.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to pay for the other ones.
But right? If you're a local owner, you don't care about the TV as much. You got to get butts and seats to make your money. I don't know that
you can use TV to get butts and seats, right?
You can. And again, I think for a season you could. But again, if I look at most of these teams, I mean, Boston plays out of a 6,000 seat venue. Ottawa, 8,000. Toronto, 8,000. New York is playing out of the Prudential Center, 16,000. Minnesota out of XL. Like, I don't know how many tickets you sell. And I don't know how many. Sure, I think people go as a novelty. But then where do you put them? Do they play out of the new rink? I think the Flames are going to want to get rid of some of those teams so they have more time for concerts and stuff in a new rink, not add more hockey. I don't know.
There would be a good argument of keeping the Saddle Dome around if you had the PWHL there.
I agree, but I think the Stampede has already said they're knocking it down.
Yeah.
I don't know the PHL could. I don't know the PWHL could pay them enough to make that viable by themselves. And either way, Kevin, I think you're going to have to shut that venue down for a couple of years if you did want to keep it and do some massive renos, which I'd be okay with, or even making it, another hall of the BMO Center or something like that. But we've heard it's crumbling. Like, I think you would almost need to take the roof off, do some repairs, put the roof back on.
Fair.
Or build another Saddle Dome there with modern tech. I mean, remember, Madison Square Garden's not really on Madison Square anymore. Like, that's the fourth Madison Square Garden, I think. So there's no reason you couldn't have a new Saddle Dome.
Yeah, I
Saddler Dome.
Saddler Dome. I'm excited that the PWHL is starting to grow. I think that this is great for the game of hockey. And I think, I think one of the I'm glad it's Hockey Day in Canada. I'm glad that there's all 7 NHL teams are playing. I think one of the sad things, there should be a PWHL game on Hockey Day in Canada.
Yeah. And, I know that the NHL is supporting PWHL, and I would love to see the two leagues work together. Like I know you'll never see probably a men's versus women's game, but I would love to see even the skills comp being men versus women or something like that.
Yeah. Or the
Go ahead.
NBA did that actually with Steph Curry versus someone for a 3-point. Like they've done it. So I think it's, and the NHL had some options with Kendall Coyne Schofield did some skating competitions. They've done it before.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, we're not here to talk about the PWHL, but I think too, the question is, are they viable in the big markets they're viable in? Like, I'm wondering, would they do better in Calgary or would they do better in Red Deer? Like, I think you may have to start looking at some smaller markets or even a place like Quebec City that's not served by an NHL team.
Fair. That's
Kansas City, place like that.
Yeah. Or well, we'll bring this up again. I think it's an interesting conversation to have. But what's going on with Fireside Chat when you do your recording?
Fireside Chat, we record on Sundays. We'll be recording tomorrow, talking a lot about some of the things that we talked about today. A couple other things that me and my co-host will be talking about. We record once a week, and you can find our podcast Mondays wherever you can find podcasts, right next to yours.
Right. And of course, we will be talking Canucks on Sunday with Sean and Chris. Lots to talk about, especially after the Oilers game. It'll be interesting to see sort of the reactions after that. So check us out tomorrow around the same time. And we'll also be going forward, we're looking at doing a full NHL specific issues podcast where we talk about some of the other issues that are going on in a more lengthier form. But we'll get into that when that happens here, where I'm working on that. But you can follow us. Sean Beardy Canuck 03, Tyler, who tells you all to calm down, TNOBLE, Chris Schneid, Schneids, SCHNEIDZ. Find Devin on Instagram and D Holmes Smith, I believe, and I am KEVOLE on all socials. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.